At the beginning of the 1980s, a television glowed inside an American living room. A child held a black joystick with one red button. A cartridge rested inside a wood-panelled console beneath the screen. With one movement of the hand, a blocky spaceship turned, a tank fired, an athlete ran, a strange creature crossed a maze. The television was no longer something the family could only watch. It responded. Department stores filled their shelves with Atari boxes. Commercials promised the excitement of an arcade without leaving home. Cartridges became birthday presents, holiday gifts, rewards, and objects of status. Children recognized the Atari logo. Parents recognized the name. For many consumers, Atari did not appear to be one company inside the video game industry. Atari was the video game industry. But the company that had convinced America to place electronic games in every living room was already helping create the conditions that would make retailers and families question whether home video games should exist at all. Within only a few years, cartridges would be thrown into discount bins, stores would reject new products, warehouses would fill with unsold inventory, publishers would disappear, Atari equipment would be transported into the desert and buried beneath the ground. How did a simple tennis game create a cultural empire? Why did interchangeable cartridges change entertainment forever? Why did Atari manufacture more software than the market could absorb? Did Pac-Man and E.T. destroy the company, or were they only the most visible symptoms of a much deeper crisis? And how did an industry that appeared unstoppable lose the trust of an entire continent? Before home video games became ordinary, computers were distant machines. They belonged inside universities, military facilities, research laboratories, and large companies. Interactive electronic games existed, but most people had never touched one. Amusement spaces were filled with mechanical attractions, pinball machines, flashing lights, bells, and physical movement. The idea that a person could control an electronic image on a television still felt almost impossible. The Magnavox Odyssey had already brought a form of electronic gaming into homes, and experimental computer games had existed for years. Atari did not invent the entire medium. Its achievement was making electronic play easy to understand, exciting to watch, and difficult to ignore. Nolan, Bushnell, and Ted Dabney believed that computer-style games could escape technical institutions and enter public entertainment spaces. Their first important attempt was Computer Space, a commercial arcade machine inspired by earlier computer games. The cabinet looked futuristic, but the controls and central idea were unfamiliar to many casual players. A person entering a bar or amusement location did not necessarily want to study instructions before spending a coin. The machine demonstrated that electronic games could exist as commercial entertainment, but it also revealed a problem that would shape Atari's next decision. A technology does not become popular simply because it is impressive. It becomes popular when people understand what to do almost immediately. Bushnell and Dabney founded Atari in 1972. One of the company's early engineers, Al Alcorn, was given the task of creating a simple electronic table tennis game. Two paddles appeared on opposite sides of the screen. A glowing ball moved between them. The rules required almost no explanation. Move the paddle, return the ball, try not to miss. A test machine was installed at Andy Capp's Tavern in Sunnyvale, California. Players approached it, inserted coins, and understood the challenge through observation. The machine attracted so much use that it reportedly stopped functioning because the coin container had become overloaded. Whether a person knew anything about computers no longer mattered. Pong transformed electronics into movement, competition, tension, and laughter. The simplicity was the breakthrough. A stranger could understand the game after watching for a few seconds. Two people could compete directly. Every successful return increased the tension. Every missed ball created an immediate emotional reaction. Pong did not ask the player to admire the technology. It allowed the technology to disappear behind the game. Atari began producing arcade cabinets, while competitors rushed to create similar machines. Electronic games spread through bars, arcades, restaurants, hotels, and amusement spaces. But public machines had a natural limit. Players had to travel to them, wait for access, and continue inserting coins. The larger opportunity was already visible. What if the arcade could enter the home? A commercial arcade cabinet could be large and expensive. A home machine needed to be affordable, reliable, easy to connect, and simple enough to sell through ordinary retailers. Atari created a home version of Pong and gained crucial distribution through Sears. which sold the system under its Telegames brand during the holiday season of 1975. Families could now connect a small machine to the television and play together without visiting an arcade. The living room became interactive. For the first time, many people experienced the strange power of controlling the image inside the television. A screen that had always delivered programs from somewhere else now reacted to the person holding a controller. Children were no longer only watching action, they were causing it. But the home Pong machine contained a weakness. It was built around a limited set of variations. When the novelty faded, the hardware could not become a completely different experience. Atari needed a machine that could change. The solution arrived through a programmable console originally called the Atari Video Computer System, later known widely as the Atari 2600. The machine remained connected to the family television, but the game could be changed by inserting a cartridge. One console could become racing, combat, sports, adventure, strategy, or shooting. The customer did not need to purchase completely new hardware whenever a different experience appeared. The console had become a platform, and if you enjoy this kind of documentary, consider subscribing. The cartridge system transformed the economics of home gaming. A family purchased the console once. Over the following months or years, it could continue buying software. Every strong game made the hardware more attractive. Every additional household created another possible customer for every future cartridge. The collection itself gained value. Replacing the console meant leaving those games behind. Atari was no longer selling one electronic toy. It was selling entry into a growing library. Building the hardware was only the beginning. Atari needed manufacturing capacity, national advertising, retail distribution, inventory, and enough money to compete in a market that other companies were quickly entering. In 1976, Warner Communications acquired Atari. The deal gave the young company access to the capital and corporate power required for mass expansion. The combination appeared ideal. Atari brought engineering creativity, arcade experience, and a culture built around speed. Warner brought money, marketing strength, manufacturing support, and relationships with major retailers. The informal startup was becoming part of a large media corporation. The Atari Video Computer System launched in 1977. Its early performance did not immediately prove that programmable consoles would conquer America. The machine was expensive, the concept was still unfamiliar, and consumers needed a reason to believe that the library would continue growing. Then Atari secured the home rights to one of the biggest arcade sensations of the era. Space Invaders arrived on the Atari console in 1980. Players already knew the game from arcades. Now they could play it repeatedly at home without inserting another coin. The conversion became a powerful reason to purchase the system and helped multiply console sales. The relationship between arcades and living rooms became one of Atari's greatest advantages. A successful public game could create demand for the hardware beneath the family television. Growth began feeding more growth. Advertising made the console familiar. Familiar arcade names reduced the fear of purchasing unknown software. Children played Atari at a friend's house, then asked for one at home. One cartridge created interest in another. Retailers gave more shelf space to products that appeared to sell quickly. Atari became part of childhood culture. Near its peak, the company's logo appeared across television commercials, magazines, store displays, cartridges, consoles, clothing, and popular entertainment. Its programmers produced entire worlds with extremely limited memory and hardware. Every movement, sound, color, and rule had to be created through careful tricks. The restrictions demanded creativity. Atari seemed to have solved the future of entertainment. It had the hardware, software, arcade properties, retailers, cultural recognition, and support of a large corporation. The living room was becoming a permanent gaming space, but the success was hiding a conflict inside the company. The Atari name appeared prominently on the boxes, while the individual programmers responsible for many games often received little public recognition. Some developers became frustrated with compensation, creative control, and the company's refusal to treat them as visible creators whose work could generate enormous revenue. Experiences differed across teams, but the conflict became serious enough for several experienced Atari programmers to leave. In 1979, David Crane, Larry Kaplan, Alan Miller, and Bob Whitehead helped form Activision. The new company would create games for Atari's console without owning the hardware itself. Its founders wanted greater creative recognition and a financial relationship more closely tied to the success of their work. Activision was more than another publisher. It proved that an independent company could produce cartridges for a console created by someone else. Atari attempted to stop Activision through legal action, arguing over intellectual property and the use of technical knowledge gained inside Atari. The companies eventually settled, with Activision continuing to publish games while paying royalties. The modern third-party console industry was emerging. This development carried enormous potential. A console company no longer needed to create every game itself. Independent studios could bring new ideas, creative competition, and larger libraries. Activision produced respected games and demonstrated that third-party publishing itself was not the problem. The problem was that Atari's ecosystem had not been designed with a mature system for controlling who could enter, how much software could be produced, or what standards needed to be met. The door had opened. Other companies followed. Some employed experienced game designers. Others understood marketing better than game development. Some expected the audience to grow forever. A famous license, colourful box, or exciting advertisement could place a cartridge on store shelves, even when the actual game offered little value. The number of publishers expanded faster than the systems needed to control quality, inventory, and consumer expectations. Everyone believed Atari was fighting rival consoles. The deeper threat was the market Atari had created. What happens when an industry built around endless new games produces more games than anyone wants to play? Retail shelves became crowded. New titles fought for attention beside established hits. Consumers could not watch online reviews, download demonstrations, or compare detailed gameplay footage before buying. The picture on the box could promise an adventure far more impressive than the blocky reality inside the cartridge. A weak game did not only disappoint one child, it created doubt about the next game sitting beside it. Parents who had paid full price for a poor experience became more cautious. Retailers that had ordered large quantities were left holding products customers no longer wanted. The business depended on predictions. Atari and other publishers had to decide how many cartridges to manufacture before knowing exactly how many buyers would appear. Producing at a large scale could lower costs and create enormous profit if demand remained strong. But when forecasts were wrong, unsold cartridges became expensive physical inventory. Boxes occupied warehouses, cartridges occupied stores, retailers demanded discounts or returns, prices fell, and games originally presented as valuable entertainment became bargain bin products. Atari had helped make software abundant. The market had not yet learned how dangerous uncontrolled abundance could become. Home computers added another pressure. Machines from companies including Commodore and Atari itself could offer games while also promising programming, education, and productivity. A parent might view a computer as a more useful long-term purchase than a console dedicated only to entertainment. Aggressive price competition made the decision even harder for the traditional console business. Then came Pac-Man. The arcade version had become a cultural phenomenon. Bringing Pac-Man home seemed like one of the safest opportunities Atari could imagine. The name was famous, the characters were recognizable, millions of console owners appeared ready to buy it. But the Atari hardware was far more limited than the arcade machine. The home conversion made severe visual and technical compromises. The game sold millions of copies, and many players used it, but it also became known for flickering ghosts, altered maze design, and a large gap between the arcade experience customers expected and the product they received. Atari manufactured an enormous quantity based on highly optimistic demand. Sales were strong by ordinary standards, yet they did not match the scale of the production forecast. Unsold and returned cartridges added pressure to a system already carrying too much inventory. Pac-Man did not destroy Atari. It revealed that Atari's confidence was moving faster than the customer. Then the company pursued a game based on E.T. the Extraterrestrial, one of the most popular films in the world. The logic seemed obvious. A famous movie could become a famous cartridge. Releasing it in time for the holiday season could produce extraordinary sales. The development schedule was not ordinary. Howard Scott Warshaw was given only a few weeks to create the game, far less time than a major release would normally require. The problem was not a lack of effort from one programmer. The corporate deadline created a situation in which designing, building, testing, and improving a polished game became extraordinarily difficult. The final game asked the player to explore screens, collect pieces, avoid enemies, and escape pits. Many players found the repeated falling frustrating. The The game received a damaging reputation, large numbers of copies went unsold or were returned, and E.T. became one of the most famous failures in gaming history. But it did not cause the crash alone. The market was already saturated, retailers were already nervous, discounting was already weakening perceived value, too many publishers were already producing inconsistent software, home computers were already creating competition, Atari's forecasts had already become dangerously optimistic. E.T. became the perfect symbol because it compressed the wider crisis into one cartridge. A powerful brand, a rushed schedule, huge expectations, aggressive production, disappointed customers, and unsold inventory. The first visible cracks became impossible to hide. Stores reduced orders, products were returned, cartridges were discounted repeatedly, small publishers collapsed, retailers no longer knew which products deserved space, a famous name no longer guaranteed that a game would sell. The crisis was not that children suddenly stopped enjoying games, it was a collapse of commercial trust. Consumers stopped trusting the box, retailers stopped trusting the publisher, investors stopped trusting the forecasts, companies stopped trusting the belief that every new cartridge would find an audience. In December of 1982, Warner Communications shocked investors by announcing that Atari's expected growth had fallen far below earlier forecasts. The news damaged confidence in the company and in the wider industry. Losses followed on an enormous scale as Atari struggled with inventory, returns, falling demand, and a market that had moved from expansion to panic. For a moment, Atari still appeared capable of escaping. The company possessed one of the most famous brands in entertainment. Millions of homes contained its consoles. Children still wanted to play. Atari still employed talented engineers and controlled valuable arcade properties. A stronger release, tighter inventory, or renewed consumer confidence might have slowed the collapse. But Atari's scale made every mistake larger. A small publisher could close quietly. Atari carried factories, employees, warehouses, corporate expectations, retailer relationships, and the reputation of the entire category. When the market contracted, the company could not shrink quickly enough. Warner eventually divided and sold major parts of the Atari business. In 1984, Jack Tramiel acquired the consumer computer and home console assets, creating Atari Corporation. Warner retained the arcade operation, which later became Atari Games. The single empire fragmented into companies following different paths. Atari did not disappear in one clean moment, the name survived. The unified company that had symbolized the entire industry did not. Then trucks arrived at landfill in Alamogordo, New Mexico. In September of 1983, Atari disposed of unsold and returned inventory from an El Paso facility. Cartridges, equipment, and other products were crushed and buried. The event grew into a legend. Over time, the story became simplified into millions of copies of E.T. being hidden beneath the desert because one terrible game had destroyed the industry. The truth was more complicated. The landfill contained several Atari titles and different kinds of inventory, not only E.T. Decades later, an excavation recovered cartridges including E.T., Centipede, Space Invaders, and other games, confirming that the burial had occurred while also challenging the most exaggerated version of the myth. The burial did not cause the crash, it was the physical result of the crash. Atari had produced more objects than the market wanted, and the desert became the final destination for part of that excess. A company that had promised the electronic future was placing pieces of that future beneath the ground. For a time, many American retailers treated home consoles as a dangerous category. Video games were described as a fading craze. Store buyers remembered unsold cartridges and collapsing publishers. The crash severely damaged the North American console business. But play did not disappear. Arcades continued, computer games continued, developers continued creating software. Other international markets followed different paths. Children had not forgotten the feeling of controlling the television. The desire survived the companies that had mismanaged it. Nintendo entered the American market carrying the lessons of Atari's collapse. The company could not simply announce another video game console and expect retailers to trust it. It presented the Nintendo Entertainment System differently, supported the platform with recognizable software, and created tighter control over which cartridges could run on the machine. Licensed products carried an official seal. A lockout chip helped block unauthorized cartridges. Nintendo controlled manufacturing and imposed strict terms on outside publishers. These policies were also designed to protect Nintendo's power and revenue, and they did not guarantee that every licensed game would be excellent, but they created a managed ecosystem after an era defined by uncontrolled supply. Atari had proved that a console needed many games. Nintendo understood that a console also needed rules governing how those games entered the market. The approach helped rebuild retailer and consumer confidence. Publishers could still create games, but they operated through a system controlled by the platform owner. The cartridge was not presented as one random product inside a chaotic flood. It belonged to a recognizable platform with a visible approval process. Nintendo's restrictions later generated controversy and legal conflict. Yet the larger lesson endured. A platform becomes stronger when other creators can build upon it, but it also needs enough control to prevent abundance from destroying trust. Modern console gaming still lives inside that tension. Platform owners invite outside developers because software creates value. They also maintain technical standards, certification processes, storefront rules, licensing systems, and control over distribution. Atari helped reveal both sides of the platform business before the industry had language for them. Its legacy extends far beyond the crash. Atari helped popularize arcade video games. It helped make home consoles a mass-market product. It normalized joysticks, cartridge libraries, licensed conversions, living room competition, and the expectation that one machine could keep changing through new software. Its programmers helped establish the idea that game creators possessed identities and value beyond the corporate logo. Activision demonstrated that independent publishers could build businesses around someone else's hardware. That model became one of the foundations of the modern game industry. Atari's influence survived because the central idea was correct. Television could become interactive, a console could become a platform, games could become a permanent form of culture rather than a temporary mechanical novelty. The company simply lost control of the scale it had created. Today, the Atari name survives through changing ownership. Old games, licensed products, modern releases, reissued hardware, and nostalgia. But its deepest cultural meaning remains attached to the beginning. The wood-grain console, the black joystick, the red button, the strange box artwork, the electronic sounds, the glowing television in a dark room. Return to the child holding the controller. That child knows nothing about production forecasts, publisher lawsuits, inventory returns, corporate ownership, or retailer panic. The child knows only that the object on the screen moves when the hand moves, that discovery survives every business mistake surrounding it. Atari's story is not simply about Pac-Man, E.T., bad management, or cartridges buried in the desert. It is about what happens when an industry grows faster than the institutions needed to protect it. Creative freedom produced extraordinary ideas. Uncontrolled publishing produced confusion. Corporate scale allowed Atari to reach millions of families. The same scale turned forecasting mistakes into mountains of unsold inventory. A famous brand created demand, but the brand could not convince customers to accept endless weak products. Rapid growth had been mistaken for unlimited demand. Atari nearly destroyed trust in home gaming because it helped create a market where everyone believed the next cartridge would sell simply because the previous one had. The company proved that the living room could support an entire software economy. It also demonstrated that no platform remains healthy when quality, supply, and customer expectations lose contact with one another. That is why Atari was both the creator and the warning. It brought electronic play out of laboratories and arcades, placed it beneath the family television, and awakened a desire that the crash could not erase. Atari lost control of the world it created. The players never gave it back,